I never believed in ghosts until the day I saw my own face staring back at me from the shadows of our stable. My name is Jonathan Aldridge, and I was 16 years old when my world shattered like fine crystal dropped on marble floors. The year was 1858, and our plantation, Aldridge Manor, stretched across 300 acres of Virginia's finest tobacco land just outside Alexandria. The Petowac River wound through our eastern boundary like a silver ribbon, and on clear mornings you could see the Capitol dome rising in the distance, that monument to a republic built on contradictions I was too young to understand. I was born into certainty. My father, Master Edmund Aldridge, was a man of standing, a planter whose word carried weight in Alexandria society, whose handshake sealed contracts worth thousands, whose approval I craved, like a man dying of thirst, craves water. My mother, Catherine Aldridge, was the daughter of a Richmond tobacco merchant, raised on French literature and piano sonatas, her hands soft as rose petals, her expectations harder than iron. Our home was a 3-storied Georgian manor with white columns that caught the morning, music, sun, and threw long shadows across perfectly manicured lawns. Inside, crystal chandeliers imported from France hung in the dining room. Persian rugs covered floors of polished oak. Oil paintings of stern-faced Aldridge ancestors lined the hallways, their eyes following me with silent judgment. I was their only child, their heir, their future. The weight of that inheritance pressed down on my shoulders from the moment I could walk. Father taught me to ride before I could music, read, to shoot before I could write my full name. An Aldridge man must be strong, he would say, his hand heavy on my shoulder. Must command respect, must never show weakness. I tried. God knows I tried. My days followed a rhythm as predictable as the seasons. Morning lessons with Mr. Peaton, our tutor, Latin, Greek, mathematics, history of the great civilizations. Afternoon rides across our land, Father pointing out property lines, explaining crop rotations, teaching me the business of tobacco and the management of the 63 souls we owned. Evening dinners where Mother corrected my posture and Father discussed politics with visiting planters, their voices rising and falling with talk of states' rights and northern aggression. I never questioned it. This was simply the world as it existed, as natural as the sun rising in the east. The enslaved people who worked our land were part of that landscape, as fixed and unremarkable as the tobacco plants they tended. I knew their names the way I knew the names of our horses, old Moses, who managed music, the stable, Aunt Dinah, who cooked meals that made visiting planters weep with pleasure, music, Big Tom, whose back bore scars I tried not to see, dozens of others whose faces blurred together in my memory, whose humanity I had been carefully taught to overlook. Among them was a boy named Samuel. I had seen him countless times over the years, a figure in the background, mucking out stalls, carrying water, hauling feed. Music! He was assigned to the stable, working under old Moses. I paid him no more attention than I paid the barn cats. But something changed that September morning. The air hung thick and heavy, pregnant with the promise of rain. I had ridden out early before breakfast, pushing my mare Duchess hard across the fields. She was lit and breathing heavy when I brought her back to the stable, and I felt guilty for it. I had always been tender-hearted with animals, a weakness Father tried to beat out of me. "Samuel," I called out, dismounting. "She needs a good rhubarb and extra oats." "Yes, Master Jonathan." The voice came from the shadows near the tack room. I had heard it before, soft, careful, with that particular cadence enslaved people used when speaking to white folks, every word measured and stripped of anything that might give offense. But this time, something made me turn and really look. He stepped into the light streaming through the stable doors, and my heart stopped. Music. It was like looking into a mirror. The same dark brown hair, thick and unruly, falling across the forehead. The same sharp jawline still losing its boyish softness. The same straight nose, the same full lips, the same gray-green eyes that Mother always said were my best feature inherited from her side of the family. The same face. My face. Samuel froze when he saw my expression. His eyes, my eyes, widened with something that looked like fear. He dropped his gaze immediately, shoulders hunching inward, making himself smaller. "I'll see to the mare right away, Master Jonathan," he mumbled, reaching for Duchess's reins. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. We were the same height, the same build, lean and rangy, not yet filled out into manhood. Even the way he stood, weight slightly forward on the balls of his feet, mirrored my own posture. How old are you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Samuel's hands trembled slightly on the res. 16, Master Jonathan. Same as you. The same age, born in the same year, possibly the same month, the same week, the same. No, it was impossible. Who's your mother? I demanded. Lily, Master Jonathan. She works in the laundry house. I knew Lily, a quiet woman with sad eyes who kept her head down and never caused trouble. I had never paid her any particular attention, never wondered about her story, never asked myself what sorrows might live behind that careful blankness. And your father? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Samuel's jaw clenched, a gesture I recognized because I did the same thing when trying to control my emotions. Don't know my father, Master Jonathan, he said quietly. Mama never said, but something in his voice told me he was lying, or rather that he knew a truth he had been forbidden to speak. I stared at him. Music. And he stared at the ground, and the silence stretched between us like a chasm opening in the earth. Take care of the mare, I finally said, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. Yes, Master Jonathan. I walked back to the house in a daze, music, my mind churning. It had to be coincidence, a strange resemblance, nothing more. Virginia was full of families who had lived in the same counties for generations, bloodlines tangling and crossing in ways no one spoke about openly. But those eyes, those exact eyes, I found Father in his study, going over account books with his overseer, Mr. Garrett, a hard man with a harder reputation whose presence always made my skin crawl. Father, I need to speak with you. He looked up, irritation flickering across his face. Can't it wait, Jonathan? We're in the middle of. It's important. Something in my tone made him pause. He studied music, my face for a long moment, then dismissed Garrett with a wave of his hand. What is it, son? I closed the door behind the overseer. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The stable boy, Samuel. How long has he worked here? Father's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A weariness, a calculation. All his life, he was born on this plantation. Why do you ask? He looks like me. The words fell between us like stones into still water. Father set down his pen very carefully. Many people share similar features, Jonathan. It means nothing. He looks exactly like me, Father. Same face, same eyes, same age. I took a step closer to his desk. Why does the stable boy look like me? Jonathan. His voice carried a warning now. You're imagining things now. I have work to. I'm not imagining anything. My voice rose despite myself. I saw him. Music. It's like looking in a mirror. How is that possible? Unless I stopped. The thought was too monstrous to speak aloud. Father stood slowly. Music, his face hardening into the expression he wore when dealing with difficult business matters. Cold, controlled, revealing nothing. You will not pursue this line of questioning, he said quietly. Do you understand me? But Father, do you understand me, Jonathan? We stared at each other across the mahogany desk that had belonged to his father and his father's father. Outside, I could hear the sounds of the plantation, voices calling, a hammer striking metal in the blacksmith's shop, the distant lowing of cattle, the sounds of a world I thought I understood. No, I said finally. I don't understand, and I won't stop asking until you tell me the truth. Father's face went pale, then flushed red. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. He had done so before when I disappointed him, though never with real violence, just enough to remind me of his authority. Instead, he sank back into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 45 years. Leave me, he said quietly. We'll speak no more of this, but I couldn't leave it. The image of Samuel's face, my face, burned in my mind like a brand. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, going through the motions of my usual routine, while my thoughts spun in circles. At dinner, I watched my parents across the table. Mother, delicate and proper, discussing the upcoming harvest ball with her usual attention to social detail. Father, silent and brooding, barely touching his food. Did she know? Could she possibly know? After dinner, I excused myself and walked back to the stable. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Samuel was finishing his evening chores, spreading fresh hay in the stalls. He looked up when I entered, and again that shock of recognition passed between us. Master Jonathan, he said carefully, something you need. The truth, I said. I need music. The truth. His hands stilled on the pitchfork, Don't know what you mean, Master Jonathan. Yes, you do. I moved closer. You know exactly what I mean. You've known all along, haven't you? Samuel's throat worked as he swallowed. Please, Master Jonathan, don't ask me questions. I can't answer. Can't or won't. Can't. His voice was barely a whisper. Some truths are too dangerous to speak. We stood there in the dimming light. Two boys with the music, same face, separated by a gulf wider than the Ptaoa Sea, deeper than any river. He's my father, too, isn't he? Samuel said finally, so quietly I almost didn't hear him. Master Aldridge, that's why Mama always told me to stay away from the big house. Why she made me keep my head down and never look you in the eye. Why old Moses watches me like a hawk whenever you're near. The words hung in the air between us, and I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. Felt my entire world tilting, music on its axis. That's impossible, I said, but even as I spoke, I knew it wasn't. I knew it was true. Samuel set down the pitchfork and looked at me directly for the first time, and I saw in his eyes, my eyes, a lifetime of knowledge I had been spared, knowledge of what it meant to be the son who didn't matter, the son who could be sold, the son whose existence was a shameful secret. I'm sorry, Master Jonathan, he said softly. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I turned and ran from the stable, ran across the darkening lawn, ran from a truth I wasn't ready to face. But truth, once glimpsed, cannot be unseen. And the question I had asked that morning, why does the stable boy look like me, father, would destroy everything I had ever known. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my four-poster bed, staring at the ceiling while moonlight painted shadows across the walls, and felt my entire identity crumbling like sand through my fingers. Who was I, if not Jonathan Aldridge, only son and heir? Who was I, if somewhere on this plantation lived a boy with my face, my blood, my father, but none of my privileges? The questions circled my mind like vultures, and with them came memories I had never examined closely before. Small moments that suddenly took on new meaning. I remembered being 7 years old, watching father emerge from the slave quarters early one morning adjusting his coat. I remembered asking mother why father visited the quarters and the way her face had gone tight and cold before she changed the subject. I remembered being 10, overhearing a conversation between two visiting planters' wives, their voices dropping to whispers when they thought I couldn't hear. Shameful, really. But what can Catherine do? All men have their appetites, and at least he's discreet about it. I remember being 13, the year Samuel would have been 13 too, watching father's face when old Moses brought a group of young enslaved boys to the house for inspection, before assigning them permanent work duties. The way father's gaze had lingered on one boy in particular, the way he had quickly looked away, had I known on some level all along, had I simply chosen not to see. When dawn finally came, I rose and dressed with mechanical precision. My hands shook as I buttoned my shirt. In the mirror above my washstand, my face looked like a stranger's, or perhaps for the first time I was seeing it clearly. Those eyes, father's eyes, Samuel's eyes. I found mother in the morning room, embroidering by the window. She looked up when I entered, and her smile faltered at whatever she saw in my face. Jonathan, darling, you look dreadful. Are you ill? I need to ask you something, mother. She set down her embroidery hoop, her expression shifting from concern to weariness. What is it? Samuel, the stable boy. Do you know who his father is? The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair, knuckles going white. Why are you asking me this? Her voice was barely a whisper. Because he looks exactly like me. Because he's exactly my age. Because father won't tell me the truth. I moved closer, kneeling beside her chair. Please, mother, I need to know. She closed her eyes, and I saw tears squeeze out from beneath her lids. When she spoke, her voice was hollow, dead. I knew from the moment I saw him, the day he was born. Lily, his mother, she was in labor the same day I was in labor with you. We were in different parts of the house, of course. I was upstairs in my bedroom with the doctor and midwife. She was in the quarters with the other women. Her hands trembled in her lap. Your father went to check on her. He said he wanted to make sure everything was proceeding smoothly, that we couldn't afford to lose a valuable worker. He was gone for hours, and when he came back, his face. She opened her eyes, staring at something I couldn't see. I knew even before I heard that she delivered a boy. Even before I saw the child, I knew. Why didn't you say anything? The question came out harsher than I intended. Say what, Jonathan? She laughed. a bitter sound I'd never heard from her before. What was I supposed to say? What was I supposed to do? Divorce him? Ruin our family's reputation? Return to my father's house in disgrace? She looked at me directly, and I saw in her eyes a pain that had been festering for 16 years. I was 23 years old. I had just given birth to my first child. I had no money of my own, no property, no rights under the law. I was as much your father's possession as any of the people he owned. The word struck me like a physical blow. I had never thought of my mother that way, as powerless, as trapped. So, you just accepted it? I survived it. She reached out and touched my face, her hand cold against my cheek. I poured all my love into you. I told myself that you were what mattered, that as long as I had you, I could bear anything. Does Father know that you know? We've never spoken of it, not once in 16 years. Her hand dropped away. That's how marriages like ours work, Jonathan. We maintain the fiction. We pretend. We smile at dinner parties and attend church on Sundays and never, ever acknowledge the rot beneath the floorboards. I stood feeling sick. I can't live like that, Mother. I can't pretend. I don't know. Then what will you do? She looked up at me. I saw fear in her eyes. Confront your father. Acknowledge Samuel as your brother. Do you have any idea what that would mean? The scandal, the social ruin. I don't care about scandal. You should. Her voice turned sharp. Because scandal doesn't just affect you, Jonathan. It affects me. It affects our family standing. It affects your future prospects. No respectable family will allow their daughter to marry into a household tainted by such open acknowledgement of misogynation. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and clinical. He's my brother, I said quietly. Doesn't that matter? He's a slave, Mother said, and her voice was like ice. That's all he can ever be. That's all the law allows him to be, and if you try to change that, you'll destroy yourself and everyone around you. I left her there, surrounded by her embroidery and her carefully maintained illusions, and went to find my father. He was in the tobacco fields, inspecting the crop with Mr. Garrett. I waited at the edge of the field until he noticed me, then gestured for him to come speak with me privately. Jonathan, I'm busy. I spoke with Mother. He went very still. Around us, enslaved workers moved through the rows of tobacco plants, their hands moving with practiced efficiency, their presence so constant we had learned not to see them. But I saw them now, saw the way they kept their eyes down when Father passed, saw the tension in their shoulders, saw the fear. What did she tell you? Father's voice was carefully controlled. Everything or enough. I met his eyes. Is it true? Is Samuel your son? For a long moment, music, he didn't answer. Then slowly he nodded. Yes, the admission should have shocked me, but instead I felt only a strange hollow certainty. I had known, some part of me had always known. How could you? The words came out broken. How could you do that to Mother? To me, to him? Father's face hardened. You're too young to understand the complexities of don't. I cut him off. Don't you dare tell me I'm too young to understand. I understand perfectly. You raped a woman you owned, and when she bore your child, you enslaved him, your own son. Watch your tongue, boy. Father's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. I was shouting now, past caring who might hear. Explain how you can look at Samuel every day and not see yourself. Music. Explain how you can own your own child. Because that's the way of the world. Father grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. Do you think I'm the only planter with children in the quarters? Do you think this is unusual? It's the natural order of things, Jonathan. It's how things have always been. That doesn't make it right, right? He laughed a harsh sound. What does right have to do with anything? I own this land. I own the people who work it. I own their children. That's the law. That's reality. He's my music brother, I said, and my voice broke on the word. My twin brother. We were born on the same day from the same father, and you've kept him in chains his entire life. He's not your brother. Father's voice was flat final. He's property, the son of a slave woman. His blood is tainted. Music. He can never be anything more than what he is. I stared at my father, and it was like seeing him for the first time. The man I had admired, whose approval I had craved, whose footsteps I had been trained to follow. He was a stranger, a monster wearing a familiar face. "I can't be your son," I said quietly. "Not if this is what it means to be an Aldridge." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the tobacco field, and I felt something inside me break cleanly. Music, like a bone snapping. The next days passed in a blur of tension and whispered arguments. Mother stopped speaking to father, music, except when absolutely necessary. Father threw himself into work, music, spending long hours in the fields or locked in his study. I wandered the plantation like a ghost. Seeing everything with new eyes, I saw the way the enslaved women flinched when father passed. I saw the children with features that echoed white faces. Not just Samuel, but others too, scattered throughout the quarters like shameful secrets. I saw the system that had seemed so natural, so inevitable, revealed as the horror it truly was. And I saw Samuel working in music, the stable, carrying the weight of a truth he had always known. One evening, I found him alone, grooming one of the carriage horses. He looked up when I entered, and I saw resignation in his eyes. "My eyes, Master Jonathan," he said quietly. "You shouldn't be here. Stop calling me that." I moved closer. "Music. My name is Jonathan. Just Jonathan." "Can't do that, Master." He caught himself. "Can't do that, not safe. I know the truth now, about father, about us." Samuel's hand stilled on the brush. "Knowing doesn't change anything. It changes everything." I grabbed his arm, and he flinched. Music actually flinched away from me. The gesture cut deeper than any words could have. "Don't you understand?" I said desperately. "We're brothers. We share the same blood. We should have grown up together. Should have what?" Samuel pulled away, and for the first time I heard anger in his voice. "Should have been equals. Should have shared your bedroom and your tutors and your fine clothes. Should have sat at your dinner table." He laughed bitterly. "You're living in a dream, Jonathan. We were never going to be brothers. Not in any way that matters. But we could be now. I could talk to father, convince him to... To what? Free me?" Samuel shook his head. "You think he'd do that? Risk the scandal? Risk other planters questioning why he freed one particular slave? Risk people figuring out the truth? Then I'll buy your freedom myself when I inherit." "You're not listening." Samuel's voice rose, then dropped quickly, mindful of who might overhear. "Even if you could free me, then what? Where would I go? What would I do? I can't read, can't write, have no trade except mecking out stalls. I'd be free in name only, still trapped in a world that sees me as less than human." The truth of his words settled over me like a shroud. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" Samuel's voice was gentler now. "For being born, for having the luck to come out of the right woman, for being white." He met my eyes. "You didn't choose this any more than I did. We're both just living the hand we were dealt." "But it's not fair." "No," Samuel agreed. "Music. It's not. But fair doesn't matter much in Virginia, 1858. We stood there in the stable. Music. Two boys with the same face and utterly different fates. And I felt the weight of blood and history and injustice pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. I didn't know it then that that conversation would be the last peaceful moment before everything fell apart. Because 3 days later, music, during Sunday dinner, with guests present and wine flowing freely, I would make a choice that would destroy my family forever. I would stand up at the table in front of my parents and Alexandria's finest society, and I would speak the truth that was supposed to stay buried, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Harrisons came to dinner on Sunday as they did every month. Judge Harrison, his wife Marguerite, and their daughter Elizabeth, who mother had decided would make me a suitable wife. Elizabeth was 17, pretty, music, in a conventional way, accomplished at piano and needlework, and utterly boring. She spoke in soft platitudes about the weather and the upcoming harvest ball, her eyes never quite meeting mine, her conversation as carefully rehearsed as a stage play. I sat across from her at our dining table, watching her delicate hands cut her roast beef into precise, ladylike portions, and felt nothing but a distant contempt. How could I care about harvest balls and piano recital when my brother, my twin brother, was sleeping on a straw pallet in the slave quarters? The dining room glittered with candlelight reflecting off crystal and music silver, and Dinah had outdone herself. Roast beef, glazed ham, sweet potatoes, green beans cooked with bacon, music, fresh bread, 3 kinds of pie, her feast prepared by enslaved hands to impress free guests. Father sat at the head of the table playing the gracious host, discussing politics with Judge Harrison. The Republicans are getting bolder, the judge was saying, his jowls quivering with indignation. This Lincoln fellow making speeches about a house divided, its inflammatory rhetoric designed to tear apart the Union. Agreed, Father said, music, refilling the judge's wine glass. The North doesn't understand our way of life. They want to impose their industrial values on an agricultural society that has functioned perfectly, music, well for 200 years. Perfectly well, I heard myself say, for whom? The table went quiet. Mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Father's eyes locked on mine, warning clear in their depths. I beg your pardon. Judge Harrison looked at me with the beused tolerance adults reserve for children who speak out of turn. I asked perfectly well for whom. I set down my own fork, my heart beginning to pound. For the planters, certainly. For the people they own, I'm not so sure, Jonathan. Music. Mother's voice was sharp. This is hardly appropriate dinner conversation, isn't it? I looked around the table. We're discussing politics, the future of Virginia, the preservation of our way of life. Seems to me the people most affected by these decisions should be part of the conversation. The boy has a point, Judge Harrison said, chuckling. Though I suspect he's been reading too much abolitionist literature. Jonathan, you must understand that the Negro is fundamentally different from the white man, inferior in intellect and moral capacity. Slavery is not a cruelty, but a kindness. It provides structure and purpose to a race that would otherwise descend into savagery. I felt something snap inside me. Is that so? I stood up, my chair scraping, music loudly against the floor. Tell me, Judge Harrison, if Negroes are so inferior, how do you explain the fact that my father's son works in our stable? The silence that fell was absolute. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering. Jonathan, sit down. Father's voice was deadly quiet. No. I was shaking now, but I couldn't stop. 16 years of carefully maintained lies were pouring out of me like poison from a lanced wound. I won't sit down. I won't be quiet. Not anymore. What is he talking about? Mrs. Harrison looked between my parents, confusion written on her face. He's talking nonsense, Mother said quickly. He's been unwell lately, haven't you, darling? Perhaps we should. I'm not unwell. I slammed my hand on the table, making the crystal music ring. I'm telling the truth, Samuel. The boy who works in our stable is my father's son, my twin brother born the same day as me to a woman my father raped. Elizabeth gasped. Mrs. Harrison made a strangled sound. Judge Harrison's face turned purple. Father rose slowly from his chair, and I saw in his eyes a rage I had music never witnessed before. You will go to your room, he said, each word precise and controlled. Now why? I laughed, and it sounded slightly hysterical even to my own ears. Music, so we can continue pretending, so we can go back to our polite dinner conversation while my brother sleeps in the quarters while his mother, a woman you violated, washes our clothes. That is enough, Father roared, his control finally breaking. You ungrateful, insolent Edmund. Judge Harrison stood, his face grave. Is this true? The question hung in the air. Father's jaw worked, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Get out of my house, music, he said to me, his voice shaking. Get out now, before you what? I challenged. Before you beat me, sell me. Oh wait, you can't do that to me, can you? Because I'm white, because I'm legitimate, because I matter. I looked at our guests, at their shocked, scandalized faces. But you can do it to Samuel. You can do it to Lily. You can do it to all of them because they're music, property, because the law says they're not fully human. This is monstrous, Mrs. Harrison whispered. Catherine, how could you allow? Allow. Mother's voice was brittle as glass. What exactly was I supposed to do? Music. Marguerite? What power do you imagine I have? You could have left him, Mrs. Harrison said. You could have. And gone where? Mother stood now too, her composure cracking. Back to my father. With what money? With what prospects? You speak as if I had choices. As if any of us have choices. Mother's right, I said, and I felt tears burning in my eyes. She didn't have choices. Samuel doesn't have choices. Lily doesn't have choices. The only people with choices in this house are the white men, and they choose cruelty. They choose rape. They choose to enslave their own children. How dare you? Father said, his voice low and dangerous. How dare you air our private business in front of guests? How dare you disrespect me in my own home? Your home! I looked around at the fine furnishings, the expensive paintings, the crystal and silver, built with stolen labor, maintained with stolen lives. There's nothing respectable about any of it. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. Edmund, I think it's best if we take our leave. This is clearly a family matter that requires privacy. Yes, Mrs. Harrison said quickly, gathering her shawl. Elizabeth, come along. Elizabeth hadn't said a word through the entire exchange. She stared at me with wide eyes, and I saw in her face not sympathy, but horror. Horror at the scandal, at the breach of social propriety, at the ugly truth laid bare. They left quickly, the judge muttering apologies, Mrs. Harrison's face tight with disapproval. The door closed behind them, and I was alone with my parents in the wreckage of our family dinner. You've ruined us, our mother said, and her voice was empty, dead. Do you understand that? By morning, music everyone in Alexandria will know. We'll be social pariah. Good, I said. Maybe then we'll understand what it feels like to be treated as less than human. Father moved so fast, I didn't see it coming. His hand connected with my face, the blow hard enough to knock me sideways. I tasted blood in my mouth. You self-righteous little fool, he hissed. You think you're noble. You think you're better than me? You've lived your entire life on the fruits of this system. Every meal, music you've eaten, every piece of clothing you've worn, every book you've read, all of it paid for by the labor of enslaved people. You're just as complicit as I am. He was right, and the truth of it burned worse than the blow. Then I don't want it, I said, wiping blood from my lip. I don't want your money or your plantation or your name. I renounce all of it. You can't renounce your inheritance, Father said. You're my son, my only legitimate son. The law. Damn the law, I shouted. And damn you, I won't be part of this anymore. I won't inherit your guilt. I turned and ran from the dining room, taking the stairs, two at a time, to my bedroom. Behind me, I heard Mother begin to cry, great wrenching sobs that echoed through the house. I threw clothes into a traveling bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the buttons and buckles. I had no clear plan, no destination in mind. I only knew I couldn't stay here, couldn't sleep another night under this roof, couldn't pretend anymore. I was halfway down the back stairs when I heard voices in the kitchen. I paused, listening. Can't believe he said that in front of the Harrisons. It was Mr. Garrett, the overseer. Boy's got a death wish. What's the master going to do? Another voice, one of the house servants. What can he do? Can't exactly. Music. Punish the boy without confirming the truth of what he said. Garrett laughed, a cruel sound, but he can make sure the stable boy pays for it. Already told me to prepare him for sale, going to the Richmond market tomorrow. My blood ran cold. Samuel. They were going to sell Samuel. I ran the rest of the way down the stairs and out the back door, across the lawn toward the slave quarters. The moon was full, casting everything in silver light. I could see figures moving in the shadows, people who had heard the commotion at the big house, who knew something had happened, but not what. The quarters were a collection of small wooden cabins, each housing multiple families. I had never been inside them before, had never wanted to see how the people who made my comfortable life possible actually lived. I found Lily sitting outside her cabin, Samuel beside her. She looked up when I approached, and I saw in her face a weariness that went bone deep. Master Jonathan, she said quietly, you shouldn't be here. They're going to sell him, I said, breathless. Tomorrow, Richmond Market. I heard Garrett talking. Samuel closed his eyes. Lily's face didn't change. She had probably been expecting this, or something like it, for 16 years. Then it's done, she said simply. No. I grabbed Samuel's arm. We can run tonight. I have money. I can run where? Samuel pulled away gently. You think we'd make it 10 mil before the patrollers caught us? You think your father wouldn't send dogs? Then I'll buy you, I said desperately. I'll convince father to sell you to me and then I'll free you. With what money? Samuel asked. You just renounced your inheritance, remember? He was right. I had nothing. No money, no power, no way to help him. I'm sorry, I whispered. This is my fault. If you hadn't said anything, I'd still be a slave, Samuel said. Music. At least now the truth is out. At least now people know. He managed a small smile. That's worth something, isn't it? It's worth nothing if you're sold away from your mother. Maybe. Samuel looked at Lily, and something passed between them. a lifetime of love and loss compressed into a single glance. But maybe it's worth something anyway. Maybe someone will hear the story and think twice. Maybe it'll plant a seed. Seeds take too long to grow, I said bitterly. That's all we have, Lily said softly. Seeds and hope and the long view. You white folks think in terms of years. We think in terms of generations. I stayed with them until dawn, sitting outside their cabin, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. Samuel told me about his life, the small joys he'd found in caring for the horses, the songs his mother sang, the stories old Moses told about Africa, a place none of them had ever seen but carried in their bones. I told him about my life, the loneliness of being an only child, the pressure of expectations, the hollow feeling of privilege built on suffering. We were brothers, discovering each other too late. When the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I heard the sound of a wagon approaching, Garrett coming to collect Samuel for the journey to Richmond. I'll find you, I promised, gripping Samuel's hand. Somehow I'll find you, and by your freedom I swear it. Don't make promises you can't keep, Samuel said. But his eyes were wet. They took him away in chains, and I stood watching until the wagon disappeared down the road, carrying my brother toward an uncertain fate. I didn't know it then, but I would never see Samuel again, and the question I had asked, why does the stable boy look like me, father, had set in motion a chain of events that would destroy not just my family, but the very foundations of the world I had known? The scandal spread through Alexandria like wildfire through dry tobacco fields. By Monday morning, the story was everywhere. In the market square, in the churches, in the parlors of every respectable home, the details grew more lurid with each retelling. Some said I had attacked my father at dinner. Others claimed Mother had tried to poison Lily years ago. A few whispered that there were other children scattered across the plantation, all bearing the Aldridge features. That last rumor, at least, was probably true. I spent Monday morning in my room listening to the sounds of the house falling apart around me. Mother's voice shrill and breaking, demanding that Father do something. Fix this. Make it go away. Father's heavy footsteps pacing his study. The slam of doors. The crash of what sounded like a whiskey bottle against a wall. Around noon, I heard a carriage arrive. Voices in the foyer. Mother's father, my grandfather, his tone cold and furious. I crept to the top of the stairs to listen. Disgrace to the family name. How could you allow this situation to develop, Edmund? How could you be so careless? I didn't allow anything, Father said, his voice thick with drink. The boy took it upon himself, to the boy. Grandfather's voice rose. You mean your bastard in the quarters, or your legitimate son who had the poor judgment to speak the truth? Both, Father said bitterly. Both of them have ruined me. You ruined yourself. Grandfather, music, said, Catherine, pack your things. You're coming back to Richmond with me. Father, I can't just leave. Yes, you can. I've already consulted with Judge Morrison. We have grounds for divorce. Adultery specifically. Edmund's liaison with a slave woman constitutes sufficient cause under Virginia law. Divorce. The word fell like a thunderclap. I had never heard of a divorce in our social circle. It simply wasn't done. Marriage was permanent, sacred, inviolable, no matter how miserable, no matter how much cruelty or infidelity it contained. But apparently there were limits even to Southern propriety. Catherine. Father's voice was pleading now. You can't mean to go through with this. Think of the scandal. Think of Jonathan's prospects. Jonathan's prospects. Mother's laugh was sharp as broken glass. His prospects died the moment he opened his mouth at dinner. No respectable family will have him now. He's tainted by association with your depravity. Then what do you suggest? Father demanded. That I lose everything. My wife, my son, my reputation. You should have thought of that before you raped your slaves, Grandfather said coldly. Now you'll face the consequences. Music. Catherine, the carriage is waiting. I heard Mother's footsteps on the stairs. She paused when she saw me standing there. Jonathan, she said quietly, I'm leaving, going back to Richmond with your grandfather. I know, I heard. Will you come with me? I looked at her. Music. This woman who had raised me, who had poured all her thwarted love and ambition into molding me into the perfect gentleman. This woman who had known about Samuel for 16 years and said nothing. No, I said, I can't. Why not? Her voice broke. What's left for you here? I don't know, I admitted. But I can't run away. Not yet. Not until I know what happened to Samuel. Samuel is gone, Mother said flatly. Sold to a trader in Richmond. He's probably halfway to the deep south by now. You'll never find him. I have to try. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw in her eyes a mixture of love and disappointment, and something that might have been respect. You're a fool, she said softly. A noble fool, but a fool nonetheless. She reached out and touched my cheek, where Father's blow had left a bruise. You're better than us, Jonathan. Better than your father and me both. I hope that's enough to sustain you through what's coming. She kissed my forehead, and then she was gone, following grandfather down the stairs and out to the waiting carriage. I watched from the window as they drove away, music taking with them the last remnants of my childhood. Father emerged from his study that evening drunk and disheveled. He found me in the library reading or pretending to read since the words kept blurring on the page. Your mother's left me, he said, as if I didn't know. Filed for divorce. The hearing is set for next month. I know. The Harrisons have withdrawn Elizabeth's hand. Judge Harrison sent a letter this morning, said he couldn't in good conscience allow his daughter to marry into a family of such moral turpitude. Father laughed bitterly. Moral turpitude from a man who owns 40 slaves and beats them regularly. At least he doesn't rape them. Music said. Father's face darkened. You don't understand. You're too young to understand. Lily was willing. She stop. Music. I closed my book. Just stop. There's no such thing as willing when one person owns the other. You know that. You've always known that. I loved her, Father said, and his voice was raw. I know you won't believe me, but I did. I loved her, and I love Samuel. I never wanted to sell him. Garrett convinced me it was necessary, that keeping him here after your revelation would only make things worse. You loved him. I stared at my father. You loved him, and you kept him in chains. You loved him, and you let him sleep in the quarters while I slept in a feather bed. You loved him, and you sold him. What choice did I have? Father's voice rose. The law doesn't recognize him as my son. Society doesn't recognize him as my son. If I had freed, music him, acknowledged him, it would have destroyed everything. Can't you see that? All I see, I said quietly, is a coward who chose comfort over conscience. Father's hand twitched, and I thought he might hit me again. Instead, he sank into a chair, his face in his hands. You've destroyed me, he said. You destroyed our family. I hope you're satisfied. I'm not, Musica said. I won't be satisfied until Samuel is free. Then you'll die unsatisfied, Father said, because I don't know where he is. Garrett handled the sale. Some trader from Richmond heading south. That's all I know. I left him there, slumped in his chair, and went to find Garrett. The overseer lived in a small house on the edge of the property. I found him eating dinner, his face flushed with drink. Master Jonathan, he said, not bothering to stand. Come to apologize for ruining your father's life. I came to ask about Samuel. Where did you sell him? Garrett grinned, showing tobacco-stained teeth. Why? Planning a rescue mission? Going to ride south and buy him back? Maybe. With what money? Garrett laughed. You're penniless, boy. Your mother's divorcing your father, which means she'll take half the estate. Your father's reputation is ruined, which means his credit is worthless. This plantation will be sold within the year, mark my words, and you'll be left with nothing. Just tell me where he is. I sold him to a man named Pritchard. Music, James Pritchard. He specializes in young male slaves for the cotton plantations in Mississippi and Alabama. Pays top dollar. No questions. Music asked. Garrett leaned back in his chair. Your brother? And yes, I know he's your brother. Everyone knows now. He'll probably end up picking cotton in the Delta. Hard work that most boys don't last more than 10 years before they're worked to death. I hit him. My fist connected with his jaw, and he went sprawling backward, his chair crashing to the floor. You bastard, I said, standing over him. You've always known, and you used it against him. Music. Garrett wiped blood from his mouth, still grinning. Of course I knew. Everyone knew. Your father's not as discreet as he thinks. He stood slowly. Now, get out of my house before I have you arrested for assault. I left, my hand throbbing, my mind racing. James Pritchard, Richmond, Mississippi, or Alabama. It wasn't much, but it was something. I spent the next week making plans. I sold everything I owned of value. My watch, my books, my riding boots. I stole money from Father's study, $50 in gold coins he kept in a locked drawer. I forged a letter of introduction, music, claiming to be a young planter looking to purchase slaves for a new property in Tennessee. And on Christmas Eve, 1858, music, while the rest of Alexandria prepared for holiday celebrations, I left Aldridge Manor for the last time. I took nothing but a small bag of clothes, the stolen money, and a daguerreotype of my mother that I had kept since childhood. I didn't say goodbye to Father. He was locked in his study, drinking himself into oblivion. I walked down the long drive in the pre-dawn darkness, past the slave quarters where Lily still lived, past the stable where Samuel had worked, past the tobacco fields that had made my family wealthy. Behind music, the house stood silent and dark, a monument to secrets and lies. Ahead of me lay Richmond, and beyond that the Deep South, and somewhere in that vast and brutal landscape my brother. I didn't know if I would find him, didn't know if I could free him even if I did, but I had to try because the question I had asked, "Why does the stable boy look like me, Father?" had revealed music, a truth that could not be ignored, and I would spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for the sin of being born on the right side of that truth. Richmond in winter was a city of contradictions, grand buildings and muddy streets, elegant carriages and slave coffles, Christmas decorations and human misery existing side by side. I arrived on Christmas Day, 1858, with $43 left in my pocket and a name, James Pritchard. Finding, music. Him took 3 days of asking questions in taverns and slave markets, of pretending to be a young plant's son looking to make his first purchase, of swallowing my disgust as I watched human beings examined like livestock. Pritchard's office was near the docks, a squat brick building that smelled of tobacco and despair. The man himself was unremarkable, middle-aged, balding, with the bland face of a clear. He could have been selling grain or lumber instead of people. "Help you?" he asked, barely looking up from his ledger. "I'm looking for a boy you purchased recently from Alexandria. About 16, light-skinned, worked in a stable." Pritchard's eyes sharpened. "You got money to buy him back? Maybe, depends on the price. Depends on why you want him." Pritchard leaned back in his chair. "You're that Aldridge boy, aren't you? The one who caused all the fuss." My heart sank. Music. The story had spread even here. "I just want to know where he is." I said, "He's gone. Sold him to a plantation owner from Alabama 3 days ago. Man named Whitfield runs a big cotton operation near Mobile. Paid premium price too. Boys, young, strong, good teeth. Music should last a decade at least in the fields. I need an address, a way to contact this Whitfield." Pritchard laughed. "What are you going to do, boy? Write him a letter. Offer to buy back a slave he just, music, purchased. He'll laugh in your face. I have to try." Something in my voice must have moved him, because Pritchard's expression softened slightly. "Look, son, I understand what you're trying to do, but you need to accept reality. That boy, your brother, or whatever he is, he's property. He's going to live and die as property. Nothing you do will change that. The law could change. Maybe music in 50 years, dear hundred, but not in time to help him." Pritchard pulled out a piece of paper and wrote something on it. "Here, Whitfield Plantation, Mobile County, Alabama. But I'm telling you, you're wasting your time." I took the paper, my hand shaking. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm part of the system that put him there." Pritchard looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Go home, boy. Make peace with your father. Inherit your plantation and try to be a better master than he was. That's the best you can do." But I couldn't go home. There was no home to go back to. I spent the next 3 months trying to reach Alabama. I worked odd jobs to earn money, mucking stables, loading cargo, anything that would pay. I wrote letters to Whitfield offering to purchase Samuel but received no response. In March, I finally scraped together enough money for passage on a steamboat heading south. I arrived in Mobile in April 1859 with $5 in my pocket, music, and a desperate hope. Whitfield Plantation was 20 miles inland, accessible only by rough roads that turned to mud in the spring rains. I walked most of the way, sleeping in fields, eating whatever I could beg or buy. When I finally reached the plantation, I was turned away at the gate by an overseer who laughed at my request to see the master. "Mr. Whitfield, don't see visitors without appointment," he said, "especially not raggedy white boys claiming to be related to his property." "Please," music, begged, "just let me see Samuel just for a moment. I won't cause trouble." "Boy, you are trouble. Now get off this property before I set the dogs on you." I tried 3 more times over the next week, each time with the same music result. On my fourth attempt, I snuck onto the property at night, hoping to find the slave quarters and music, locate Samuel myself. I made it as far as the cotton fields before the dogs found me. Music. They didn't kill me. The overseer called them off before they could do more than tear my clothes and leave deep scratches on my arms and legs. But they beat me badly. Music. 3 men with clubs, and left me on the road with a warning that if I came back, they'd have me arrested for trespassing. I lay in the dirt, bleeding, and music, broken, and finally accepted the truth. I had failed. Samuel was gone, swallowed up by the vast machinery of slavery, and I lacked the power, the money, the influence to save him. I made my way back to Mobile, working passage on a ship heading north. By summer, I was in Philadelphia, living in a boarding house and working as a clerk. I never returned to Virginia, never saw my father again. I heard through letters from distant relatives that the plantation was sold in 1860, that father died of a stroke in 1861 alone and disgraced, that mother remarried in Richmond, music, and never spoke my name again. I heard that the war came, that Virginia seceded, that the world I had known was torn apart by 4 years of blood and fire. And I heard in 1865 that slavery was finally abolished. Music. Too late for Samuel. Too late for Lily. Too late for all the people whose lives had been stolen to build the South's wealth. I tried to find him after the war. Traveled back to Alabama in 1866, searched records, asked questions. But the chaos of Reconstruction had scattered people like leaves in a storm. Former slaves had taken new names, moved to new places, tried to build new lives from the ruins of the old. I never found my brother. I never knew if he survived the war, if he lived to see freedom, if he ever thought of me, the brother who had tried and failed to save him. I lived the rest of my life in Philadelphia, working as a clare, then a bookkeeper, eventually a manager in a shipping firm. I never married, never had children, never spoke of my past to anyone who didn't already know. But I never forgot. I never forgot the question that destroyed my family. "Why does the music stable boy look like me, Father?" I never forgot the answer and the terrible truth it revealed. And I never forgot Samuel's face, my face looking back at me from the shadows of the stable, carrying a burden I had been spared by nothing more than the accident of birth. Some nights, even now, I dream of him, dream of a different world where we grew up together, where the color of our mother's skin didn't determine our fates, where brothers could be brothers regardless of the law. But I wake to reality, to the long shadow of history, to the knowledge that justice delayed is justice, music denied. And I carry that knowledge like a stone in my chest, heavy and cold, until the day I die. This was the story of Jonathan Aldridge. He lived in Philadelphia until his death in 1891 at age 49, never marrying, never returning to Virginia. He left his modest estate to the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. His grave in Laurel Hill Cemetery bears only his name and dates. No mention of family, no epitaph. Samuel's fate remains unknown. No records exist of the slave by that name surviving the Whitfield plantation or living to see emancipation. Lily died in the Alexandria contraband music camp in 1863, her last words reportedly asking for her son. The Aldridge Manor was burned, music, during the war. Nothing remains but a historical marker, noting it as the site of a minor skirmish in 1862. Music. The echoes of Jonathan and Samuel's story reverberate through time, a grim reminder of the brutal truths hidden behind plantation walls and the devastating cost of secrets built on human bondage. If these untold stories of family torn apart by slavery's cruelty resonate with you, join our community. Subscribe to Slave Revenge to uncover more hidden truths from the shadows of America's darkest chapter. Your support helps keep these powerful narratives alive. Leave a comment sharing what moved you most about Jonathan's impossible choice in Samuel Stowin.